Arnold.
All right. Welcome to the Dean Arnold Podcast. It is August 24th. We've got a pretty interesting stream today. I think it's going to whet the appetite of a lot of those people who they want to talk about current events and, issues of the day. What do you think about tax structure? I mean, we're way beyond tax structure, folks. The world's gone insane. I'm bringing sanity to an insane world. Well, today we're going to talk about who killed John Lennon. And more importantly, we're going to talk about some of the very interesting phenomenon behind the John Lennon murder, which really gets into what I'm talking about is we're way beyond tax structure. I mean, we got these Epstein files and we got people killing and eating children and all sorts of horrible things that haven't been dealt with. And you kind of got to get beyond all that and start talking about more important things, which I am. And when I talk about more important things, I'm talking about more important things. We're going to get into it with this John Lennon stuff. Mark David Chapman was his alleged killer. And we'll get into whether that was the case or not. And, Mark David Chapman, he got into some deep stuff, demonic exorcism kind of stuff. We'll talk about it. And it's worth talking about. It needs to be talked about. It was talked about publicly and then dropped pretty quick. But it's actually, I think, very relevant to what's going on today. All right. Vote for me in November. DeanArnoldForCongress.com is where you go give. Like, share, subscribe. Comments always appreciated. Appreciate that. Bringing sanity to an insane world. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This insane world that doesn't believe in demons. Well, better believe in demons. And it's okay to believe in demons because we have power over demons through Jesus Christ. So no fear. But let's get realistic. Okay, another little relevant thing that I think I'll just mention. I've been attempting to do so the last 2 or 3 days. Tucker Carlson is starting a new political party, they say, with Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Joe Kent, and some others. And I agree with all those people and most of their views. And I'm running as an independent, but I'd like to, if they start a new party, I'd like to run as, with their party. And I've actually emailed most of them and haven't heard back, not surprised. But if anybody knows where I would go to do that, there's got a connection, let me know. Because I'm all up for a new party. Absolutely. If you want to know my platform right now, I'm telling people I depart with the Democrats on wokeness and LGTB, and I depart with the Republicans on Israel first. And there's a wide berth there in the middle for someone like me. And I hope people vote for me. We shall see. Should be fun. All right. Let's move into the next part of our show, which is the lectionary, but first we'll fear the beard. All right, nice. Okay, let's go into the scriptures of the day. 2 Corinthians 8. Get up there. There you go. But as you abound in everything, in faith and speech and knowledge and all diligence and in your love for us, see that you abound in this grace also. And by this, he means giving. So this is a little giving chapter. And I'm not going to get into a whole lot of it. Verse 12, I might be able to have a comment on that. For if there is first a willing mind, it is accepted according to what one has, and not according to what one does not have. All right, that's kind of veiled lingo, but I did some research on it, and John Chrysostom and others think that this is basically saying, Paul's saying, hey, if you don't have any money, I'm not telling you to give me, a bunch of money. Give a little bit if you got a little bit. like the widow's mite. And if you got a lot, give a lot. That's what he's saying here. And I just thought I'd point that out because the televangelists out there, that's not what they say. They're like, I don't care what you got. Give it to me. Give whatever you can, because I'm telling you that God is going to give you a whole bunch more money if you'll give what you have to me. Awful, terrible. Paul talks about that too, going into widows' homes and stealing from them. But that's not what he says here. If you got a lot of money, give a lot of money. If you got a little bit of money, just give a little bit of money. I'm not trying to get you to do stupid things. All right. That's the epistle today. Gospel of the day. Then the Pharisees went out and immediately plotted with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. All right. And then there's, Jesus goes out and the cords come against him, and he tells the disciples to put a boat in the water just to get away from the people who might, smush him. That's all very interesting. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm talking about the first verse. Then the Pharisees went out and immediately plotted with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. Here, remember, was it yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, we talked about separation of church and state? Well, it ain't going on here. The Pharisees and the Herodians, Herod's the kind of the king, the governor of Palestine, and the Pharisees, the religious leaders, they get together to think about how they can kill Jesus. We can find some unity on that matter. No separation of church and state in this situation. The reason the Pharisees wanted to kill him, in part, was the story before is where Jesus is in this house and this guy has a hand that's crippled, and he tells them to put the hand out, and he asks the leaders out there, he asks the Pharisees, he asks everybody who's out there, what's more important or what's more difficult, to heal a hand or to forgive sins? And he says, but so you'll know I have the power to forgive sins, stretch out your hand. So this guy gets healed right in front of him, but it was on the Sabbath. So these religious leaders, all they care about is the Sabbath. They don't care that this guy had a shriveled up hand his entire life and suddenly it got healed. And Jesus, it's common sense. It's just common sense. Jesus, love people, care about people, get your priorities right, just get beyond all this letter of the law stuff. And we got a guy here, we need to heal his hand, and we just healed his hand. Isn't that more important than your little pesky Sabbath laws that you can find in the Old Testament? But this is more important. They missed it all. Oh, well, we're still trying to parse that out for some people who think that the Old Testament is more important than the New Testament and Jesus and love. Got a lot of people out there like that. Lord have mercy. All right. Saint of the day, Christian hero, as I like to call it sometimes, is Syra, I think her name is. Virgin Martyr Syra of Persia. Okay. She lived in the 6th century in Persia, obviously. Her parents were illustrious pagans, Zoroastrians. And she was educated to be a pagan priestess. She worked in the heathen temple of fire, occupied herself with honorable activities. So I guess that means she wasn't a prostitute, which is going to come up later, I think. And once, after speaking with some Christian beggars, Syra believed in Christ and began to live as a Christian. She began to learn prayers and psalms, to fast, and to read Christian books. But then she fell ill. She couldn't find a remedy for her sickness, so she went to the Christian church and asked the priest only to give her some of the ashes from the church, hoping to receive healing from them. The priest, however, knowing Syra to be a servitor of idols, refused her request. So she's trying to get more Christian, and the priest won't let her do it. Syra was not angered, recognizing her own worthiness. She just touched the robes of the priest like the woman with the issue of blood, and suddenly she gets healed, and she returns home healed. Her family begins to suspect that she wanted to accept Christianity. So they sent someone to try to talk her out of it. And let's see, she saw a vision in her sleep. She goes to the bishop to try to become a Christian. But the bishop, he feared that, she might give the pagan priests a reason to start persecuting Christians if she, a prominent pagan, becomes a Christian. Besides this, he thought that Syra, fearing her father's wrath, would deny Christ. So the bishop advised her first to openly confess her faith in the Savior before her kinsfolk. So first she goes to the priest won't make her a Christian. Then she goes to the bishop, and the bishop won't make her a Christian. I got a close friend who became Orthodox 20 years ago. He had the same story. He kept trying to become Orthodox, and he couldn't become Orthodox. They wouldn't let him in. Now he's a priest. But anyway, funny stories. But she did. She got it in front of everybody, and she said, I am a Christian, and I reject false gods, and I believe in the true God. So her father beat her until he became exhausted, threw her in prison, and they denounced her as a high priest, or he was a high priest. He denounced her, took her to the governor. They tortured the holy maiden for a long time in prison, but the Lord strengthened her, and she stood firmly on her faith in Christ. Then she bribed the prison guard. Is it okay to bribe people? I guess in this case, because she was bribing the prison guard to get out so she could get baptized. She was granted the gift of wonder working. The Persians gave her over for the leering of impious men. So she's gonna get raped in prison. That's the plan. They began to jeer at her, but nothing came of it. They continued to torture her, and she fell deathly ill. She began to entreat the Lord that he not permit her to die from the illness that she had. She wanted a martyr's crown. So the Lord heard her, granted her healing so she could be martyred. Seeing the martyr healed, the prison guard and the jail warden went to dishonor the holy maiden. So once again, she's about to get raped, but the Lord struck one with illness and the other one was struck dead. So the martyr was condemned to be strangled. They conducted the execution with refined cruelty. After a while, they let go of the rope, asking the saint whether she wanted to change her mind. She said no, refused, and the execution was done quickly. The body of the saint was thrown to dogs to be devoured, but they would not touch it. So lots of respect for the body of this young woman, Syra, virgin martyr. Excellent stuff. What wonderful testimonies we have going before us. John Lennon. Who killed him? Was it Mark David Chapman? What happened to him after the alleged assassination? How come you've never heard about it? Well, you're about to now. I have a couple personal connections to the whole story, which makes it even more interesting. But let's talk about it. The rubric to the story. Everybody knows who John Lennon is. One of the Beatles. And he was kind of the most kind of anti-authoritarian, anti-establishment of the Beatles, kind of outspoken in that way. Apparently the feds were following him all the time because he was outspoken against war in Vietnam and these kind of things that the federal government, military, industrial establishment doesn't appreciate, and it's not helpful for them. So he was a danger to their situation, which is important because we need a motive as to why he would be killed. And then one day in 1980, I was a sophomore in high school. We wake up to find out that John Lennon has been murdered, assassinated. And then a few hours later, they were told that some lone gunman nut named Mark David Chapman had done it. And they kind of wrapped it up, and that was it. No more investigation, really. Then Mark David Chapman, he's been in prison. He's still in prison now, somewhere in New York. And but he's got a story to tell that I'm going to tell you right now. Gave an interview to People magazine in 1987. I made a copy of it then. I was so intrigued by this article, and I've kept it ever since. There it is, copy of the article, People magazine. Can't find it online. I had to ask AI several times to get to the salient details that I'm going to share with you. But yeah, That was quite an interview with People magazine, and I kept a copy of it in 1987. Let's talk about the case itself. The Now hold on here. I'm going to have to go to my topics thing. That's the problem. Okay, let's talk about the case itself. There is a interview by William Ramsey of a author named David Wieland, and the book is called Mind Games: The Assassination of John Lennon. And I'll try to post this in the show notes, but I think if you Google what I just gave you, William Ramsey investigates. He's on X. He did an interview with author David Whelan, Whelan. And this came out in 2023, so fairly recently, with new information and old information on the murder of John Lennon. He does not think that Mark David Chapman killed John Lennon. He actually thinks Chapman had blanks in his gun. Chapman thinks he killed him. But the whole thing with MK Ultra is they don't not only create Manchurian candidates who actually do kill people, they create people who think they kill. What were you doing disappearing like that? I didn't like that at all. Okay. So why? Well, the main reason is John Lennon was shot 4 times in the front, all near his heart, at close-up range. We know this for various reasons. Mark David Chapman could only have killed him. He was kind of out in the driveway as Lennon was going up into his place. He could only have shot him in the back. But John Lennon was shot in the front. And Chapman would have had to been like 15, 20 feet away or more. He wouldn't have gotten 4 shots right into the heart close like that. You'd have to be close to do that. There are some women. Let's see if I can find them. Yeah, these 2 women right here were the nurses. They were in a some kind of ICU unit where they saw gunshots all the time, and they saw John Lennon's body, and they saw that he had 4 bullet wounds in the front. They came out the back, but they came in the front. So that's eyewitness testimony. Unfortunately, the doctor on the scene who claimed to do CPR and pump his heart, he testified that he couldn't, never saw the bullet wounds, which is kind of dumb. Well, this doctor came out in 2011 and said, I was the doctor who pumped the heart, not that guy. He was just back in the shadows. But it took him till 2011 to come out and say that. And by then, I guess his memory, maybe he testifies to front bullet wounds. I don't know. But the first guy kind of prevented that narrative from getting out. All right, there's the Dakota. That's the building that John Lennon lived in. And he was coming in the back. That's where he got murdered. Also, the place where Rosemary's Baby was filmed. I don't know if that's either here nor there, but some people like to point it out. Okay. So, what else we got here? The gunshots, see, like 4 around the heart. He's dead instantly. But the official story says that he walked a long way upstairs to a back office, and that's where he was found dead. The lead detective says he must have died inside face down where Chapman had no access. So some second gunman was there, shot him at point blank range, and killed him. Yoko gave 5 different statements, official statements. She was all very confused. There was one witness, Nina Rosen, who wasn't revealed for 43 years. She said Lennon wasn't anywhere around from what she saw, and she saw that Chapman had no gun. What else? There was never a trial of Mark David Chapman because he pled guilty. Now, why did he plead guilty? Well, when he's in his prison room, a couple weeks before the trial, he gets visited by some of the top CIA MK Ultra spooks on the planet. They sent in a hypnotist who worked with the CIA and MK Ultra, a guy named Milton Klein, a guy who boasted that he could create Manchurian candidates. They sent him in to meet with Chapman a few times, trying to get him to plead guilty. They also sent in one of Sirhan's psychiatrists. One author called it a hypnotist convention. Anyway, so they're working on Chapman, and he's all confused, and you'll see just how incredibly confused he was here in a little bit. The attorney that was appointed worked for the law firm of the founder of the CIA, William Joseph Wild Bill Donovan. William Colby also had worked in that law firm, but his attorney, Jonathan Marks, his chief assistant was David Suggs, who worked for this firm founded by the CIA. Anyway, a lot of weird stuff like that, which causes a lot of confusion. Now, just how confused was Mark David Chapman? Well, I'll tell you how confused he was. He gave this interview to People magazine, 1987. Lennon was shot in 1980. And he said, I was just very confused and tormented and psychologically convicted or whatever. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and his pastor and his priest and a few other people, they get together and they do an exorcism on him. And he says he felt it. He felt these entities leaving his body. He thought they were a part of him and who he was, snarling and cursing, and it was never his mojo. But suddenly they're leaving his body and he can feel it. Oh, by the way, my first connection to this case, I got a second connection that's bigger coming up. My first connection to this case is that Mark David Chapman went to my alma mater, of all things, Covenant College here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, on top of Lookout Mountain. There's Covenant College. And Mark David Chapman went there in 1986, spring semester. And he had a girlfriend there, and he chased her around, and then he left, and her name never got out. So the public relations people at Covenant and her and others did a very good job of being tight-lipped, so she doesn't have to be harassed the rest of her life with the Mark David Chapman thing. But he went to Covenant College, and it was kind of just a regular old kid, hung out in the lobby playing his guitar, and did not stand out to anybody as particularly weird or strange, just another guy, which, that stands to reason. Anyway, so he starts going through this exorcism, and all these entities are leaving his body. And he's like, oh, so that's what was going on. Oh, my gosh. And ever since, Chapman has been a card-carrying, evangelical believer, loves the Lord. He and his wife both. He's still married to his wife that he was married to when Lennon was shot. They've been married for many, many years, do conjugal visits in the prison. Love the Lord, serious, outspoken Christians. And that's been Mark David Chapman for the rest of his life. Okay, well, maybe it's jailhouse religion, or maybe it's whatever it is, whatever you think it is. Here's what he said in People magazine. I had to search real hard online to get these details. They're in the article that I held up for you. But here's what he said. There was 6 or 7 demons ultimately, I think, but there were 2 main ones. The first one was called Lila, spoke in a high-pitched female voice. And it was her first human possession. So Lila was there in the high-pitched voice, and then the other one was named Dobar. This demon spoke in a low, snarling, aggressively male voice. Thousands of years old demon who was highly well-versed in biblical scriptures and served on a ruling supreme council in Hades, which, according to the rest of the story, which is only in the article that I held up to you and not online, whose power is secondary only to Satan himself. So, yeah, this thousands of year old ancient demon was inside him and getting him to do things. And this is all very strange, detailed stuff. I read it in People magazine in 1987. And then I did all my Google searches and AI searches, so the first 5 or 6 or 7. I couldn't get this kind of detail. I finally had to ask what were the specific names of the specific demons that Chapman talked about in the People magazine interview. And I finally got this Lila Dobar stuff. So this just goes to tell you that, yeah, we've got AI and we've got Google and we got all this kind of stuff. But if you don't know specifically what you're looking for, then they can specifically keep from you the really important information that is not according to their worldview. By the way, the guy who wrote this book about who killed John Lennon, he's a self-described agnostic. And so when you get to the exorcism part of the story, he's not very keen on it. We bring up, not them, I've already brought them up. Yeah, I think I already brought him up. Yeah, here we go. That's the one I want right there. That right there is a Presbyterian pastor named Charles McGowan. McGowan was involved with the exorcism of Mark David Chapman in the New York prison. Now, McGowan's Presbyterian pastor he's a little old now, in Nashville. But I knew him. I got to know him. I was involved in, I believe it was some sort of pro-life, pro-family, anti-pornography kind of movement where we go to Nashville sometimes to have to deal with the political stuff. And we had some kind of council, some kind of group that was meeting, and McGowan was on it. He was the pastor of a big Presbyterian church, Covenant Presbyterian in Nashville. Maybe Christ Presbyterian. I forget which one it was, but it's a big one. So here's this Presbyterian pastor who's involved in exorcisms. I mean, you can't make it up. Charles McGowan. I'll bring myself up now. Yeah. And somehow, me being me, I got to know the guy, and I'm talking, I have questions, and next thing you know, he's telling me about the Mark David Chapman thing. I don't know how I do this stuff, but I was an investigative reporter for years, and I'm just good at getting people to tell me stuff. And so he starts telling me about it. I was like, well, I got that article by People magazine where they talk about it. He said, yeah, I was there. It's like, whoa. And so I talked to him about it, and we talked, and, that's about it. Back then I thought, maybe I ought to write a book about this whole Mark David Chapman thing. And I'm even thinking about that now. It's like, man, this is quite a story. But yeah, I had a personal interaction with the guy. I believed him. I believed he was and is sincere. The guy who wrote this book, he does this interview with William Ramsey, and he has only bad things to say about McGowan. He talks about how he was in military intelligence in his former life, and and so everything now is suspect. And he thinks that the whole demons thing is a way for the CIA to have a footstool to get into driving Chapman crazy. I'm not sure what all his angles were, but he didn't like exorcism, and he doesn't believe in demons or angels. And so at that point, we part. I appreciate the investigative work he's doing, showing that it's likely that a second gunman killed Lennon. And I think what you have to say is that the federal government did not want Lennon around. He was becoming dangerous. He was giving interviews to Playboy magazine and other prominent places where he was talking about the nefarious role of the government. And so you have to believe that somebody wanted Lennon gone. And so a second shooter actually shot him point blank. But Chapman was set up as the patsy, as usually these patsies are. And we could spend a lot of time, more detail on that, which we won't do. My main interest is in Chapman himself, this exorcism that no one ever hears about, even though it was prominently talked about in People magazine. Kudos to whoever wrote that and published that. I mean, the people behind the publishing, no pun intended. Yeah, this is all fascinating stuff. And I believe in exorcism, and I believe in demons, and I believe we've got to fight demons. And I'm very thankful that somebody ministered to Mark David Chapman to get him released of all this stuff. And it's even possible that he's not guilty of the murder. Maybe he really was shooting blanks like this author believes. Or maybe he just missed from 15, 20 feet away, which was more likely. Lennon certainly wasn't shot in the back. So Mark David Chapman probably did not kill him. But today he's serving the Lord, and somebody got to him. Somebody delivered him. And we got a lot of people right now in our government and in other places that need deliverance. They just need demonic deliverance. They have given themselves over to evil, and it just goes from bad to worse. And you think you're going to solve it with a prescription drugs? I don't think so. Need something a little more powerful than that. Okay. Comments. I had one comment at the very beginning that's just kind of saying hello. Views are insane. Okay. That could be a bot. No questions or comments on this very salacious topic. I'm surprised. But I think I've told you everything I wanted to tell you. Let's see here. Other witnesses, the lead detective. The lead detective is very suspicious about everything, but he was told to wrap it up quick. I think Charles McGowan is still alive. Be interesting to interview him. I got a lot of things to do, so I don't think I'm going to do it. But he's a true Christian man, godly Christian man, who was, ironically, as a Presbyterian, Bible-believing Presbyterian. My father's denomination, Presbyterian Church of America. It's a Bible-believing Presbyterian. He's involved in an exorcism. He had been involved with Chapman at like age 15, 16. He was troubled back then, and McGowan had tried to counsel him and help him. So that's how he got involved in the mix. All right. I think we are done for the day. This has been a rather interesting podcast, would you not say? I think I would say. But appreciate you guys. Vote for me in November. DeanArnoldForCongress.com. Like, share, and subscribe. Bring insanity to an insane world. Insane Mark David Chapman gets delivered of demons and becomes sane and has been in his right mind and following Jesus for decades. And if you don't like that, well, then you don't like the Christian story and Jesus and forgiving the thief on the cross. But according to what we just covered here, it's very possible Chapman didn't kill him anyway. So you need to get past the hate. The deep state uses hate. The enemies of God use hate to manipulate you. So get past the Mark David Chapman hate and be thankful that he has been in his right mind and following Jesus for the last several decades. It's a wonderful story. All right, we are out of here. It is August 24th.
Dean Arnold.